This is the Retro XP Podcast, a podcast dedicated to retro video games from the first and second gen, with the Odyssey and the Atari 2600, all the way up to Gen 7 with the Xbox 360 and the PS3. Today's episode will be another video game diary. I thoroughly enjoyed actually making the first one, and I got a lot of good comments from people, so I decided to keep the thing going. And unfortunately, this video game diary is not a happy, good feeling one. I'm sure, as many of you seen, I'm going to be talking about PlayStation's announcement and what that means for the physical media moving forward, and just kind of like my reactions to it and what collecting physical really means to the very small minority of us, and most importantly, me. All right, so let's dive into it. So in case you haven't heard, Sony officially announced the end of physical media for their home console market starting in January 2028. They said, in quote, as a consumer preference, and the broader entertainment industry continued to shift away from physical disc to digital, they're going to stop producing as of January 2028. And they said, quote, this is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends as the general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs. I think this is their pivot to prepping for an all-digital media platform for the upcoming PlayStation 6. And man, with prices the way they are right now, who the hell can afford the next generation? I mean, I'm looking at, how much RAM prices are going up and how much storage SSD drives are going up, and whether you can say the multitude of reasons of collusion with computer tech companies and AI data centers being built and hogging up all the hardware and stuff. Look at the Steam machine right now. In case you haven't noticed, the Steam machine is well overpriced because of this stuff. I mean, it's, if you're going to be spending this amount of money and you want good hardware, I guess you might as well buy a PC. So the next generation is going to be kind of an interesting one that we're going to be keeping an eye on, I guess. And let me tell you, though, in light of kind of what Sony has announced, like social media lit up with the news, expressing disappointment. It even got to the point, I was kind of on Twitter for a little bit this morning, and it got to the point where even like other companies were kind of making fun. Domino's came out with a tweet, said they're going to offer digital pizzas. KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, came out to say they're only going to they're going to stop making physical chickens, as a result. Even Merriam-Webster, I think, came out and said something or so. Or I could be getting that confused with soccer right now because it's such a blend of like World Cup soccer and video game news right now for me. It's like my brain's ready to blow. But yeah, and obviously tons of YouTube content creators, tons of Twitter, Instagram content creators, and it kind of remains to be seen what will come to pass with this. One thing that's very interesting about this news is that Sony's got a point here in what they said. In that post, they mentioned that they're keeping up with the growing market trends and what gamers prefer. And to be frank, most prefer digital downloads over buying physical media. The numbers are there. There's like over 80% of players buy their games digitally, and we're talking from big AAA titles to even the small indie ones. From a business standpoint, you meet your customers where they are. And this is doing just that. And it's hard to argue against that. I'd be confident in this thought that Sony's doing the right thing and making the right business decision if it wasn't for their proclivity to delist games from their storefronts and even just taking away movies from people who have actually bought them, basically removing them from their collections because their licenses, quote unquote, were expired, which is wild to think about because you think you buy something, you think it's just yours to keep. Not only Sony in this case, but publishers themselves like Ubisoft, EA, and even Microsoft. Nintendo even too as well. Delist games all the time. Cruisin' Blast just got delisted from the Nintendo Switch store just recently. And Cruisin' Blast was a fun game. If you're like the Cruisin' USA series. The list of games that you can't play currently despite the fact you maybe purchased them. I mean, it's growing by the day. And this even includes older retro games. Now, and to put this into perspective, because a lot of people are like, who cares about this? Like, you can still buy the games. The games will still be there for purchase. To put this into perspective, if the generation that is Sony started with the PlayStation 1 as a digital-only device, say they just started digital-only, you can only download these games. That's nearly 2,500 games that you won't have access to or have the ability to play. I mean, we're assuming that Sony would have shut down the storefront, if there was one at the time, which, as we know now, they plan to do just that with the PS3 starting in July of 2027. And pretty much 2,500 games gone, lost into the ether that you can't download, you can't access by any legal means. And then, of course, we move on to the PlayStation 2, a collection but pretty much at the same number, if not more. And with that storefront, thousands of games gone again. I mean, same can be said about Microsoft with the Xbox consoles and Nintendo with the Wii and the Wii U. I mean, the latter, the Nintendo, being the worst offender, compared to the three, because the Wii and the Wii U and the 3DS storefronts are all officially closed and have been for years. These companies made great games and yet don't care about preserving them on their own terms, which is kind of wild for me to think about. You think you would try to work some sort of angle to be like, let's still make these games digitally available for our customers, especially those that maybe enter the gaming sphere late. There's people out there that don't have video game systems and maybe decide to pick up a Wii U from a friend or a spouse or a family member or something like that. And then all of a sudden now it's like, what, the Wii U is like a 20-year-old system? Oh, great. I want to buy games for it. How can I buy games for it? I mean, you can't. I mean, it's a small minority of those people that get that, but that's still a customer base that you kind of need. And in this regard, I thought it would have been an easy choice for them, to kind of sell their digital games on their own terms, backwards compatibility in some form, basically. Microsoft did it with the Xbox systems. They came out, I want to say that was probably one of the best things that they did in the previous generation is, having this commitment to backwards compatibility for a lot of their old games. I mean, your Series X can play original Xbox disc games on them. Not all of them, but a good portion of them. And a lot of the kind of good ones, the kind of top tier Xbox games, you can put into your Series X and you can play that. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, your PlayStation 5 can only play back to PS4. The PS3 at one point could play PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games. And then with like this hardware update, they took away PlayStation 2 compatibility for some reason, which was a weird choice. And I think even at the time, they even mentioned in a tweet that did not age well that no one cares about old games, which, like I said, did not age well. I mean, this whole thing brings up the wider thought of games preservation, in that at some point in the future, the games that are coming out now, 2026, will be unplayable from a digital standpoint. You won't have the ability to purchase and download games from your childhood from an official storefront in the future. That is if we get a PS7 or PS8 in our lifetimes, if Sony survives the next generation. The old storefronts will close because companies claim it's so expensive to run these old servers and implore you to buy their new stuff. They don't want you looking back. They don't want to monetize nostalgia in any way. If the companies like Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft could, future-proof their hardware to be able to buy anything from their legacy catalogs, no matter the hardware you have, then I'd be inclined to believe that they really do care about games preservation and giving power to the consumers, i.e. their customers. That's all they consider us. They don't consider us gamers or enthusiasts. They consider us customers. We pay them money. They give us the thing. And they obviously reserve the right to take that thing away and keep our money. And I don't believe all this stuff will come to pass. I really don't, because we haven't seen these kinds of practices yet. They've never made any indication to say that we plan on doing this. And, I'm picking on Sony here because obviously they're most recently in the news. But in case you also haven't missed it too, Sony announced they will be shutting down the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita servers within a year. So pardon me for not being so confident that they plan on, caring about games preservation. I mean, this is why physical media is so important, because you always have it, no matter what. And retro games, admittedly, have the edge here. You know, when I mention retro games, I mention everything past Gen 7. That's very notoriously known in my intro. Retro games have the benefit of having the entire game's data being on that cartridge or disc that you have. It didn't require an extensive download or an extensive update, upon putting the disc in when you buy it. I mean, because not all data could fit on the disc now. And even, hell, even in the past, if data couldn't fit on one disc, it was put on the 2, 3, or even 4 discs. I mean, I would say that this current generation has brought us these new terms called like game key cards, digital keys, or just download discs or whatever into the limelight. I don't know how else you want to call it, but I mean, it's basically a practice in which, yes, you get a physical item in the form of a disc or a small cartridge, but there's no official game data on it. It serves as a key, quite literally a key to allow you to download the game. I mean, having these kinds of discs gives power to the consumers, to be able to sell or trade the disc in to the next buyer, which is, some people have argued that, hey, at the very least, you could still take this game and trade it in the GameStop, or you could still take this game and, loan it to your friend or loan it to your, family member or whatever, when you're done with it. But nonetheless, still, you're selling or you're giving a permission to download. You're not giving the disc, so to speak. And, that's been very well known, and documented for a lot of times that, you really don't own the game. You own the license, or you own the, permission to play. Nintendo is notorious right now for that game key card debacle. And I know it's such a stupid thing to say, but I've made a stance to never buy a game key card. I know I'm a minority here with this stance because there's a lot of Switch 2 fanboys out there and fangirls out there that love their Switch 2s and don't mind, having a game key card, or just don't mind, downloading them. If I wouldn't mind either if the Switch 2 had more storage space. But I believe in buying physical game should have data on said physical item. It's games preservation in the end. It's kind of one of those reasons why I still collect retro games. And, I go to my shelves and I kind of stand in front of them and I look and I say, I have them. I have these. These are in my collection. I mean, yeah, like as I'm buying right now, the original publishers and developers don't reap the rewards for them when I buy from local mom and pop shop down the road, or, any reseller or whatever. But it's more of a personal high for me in saying that at any point, at any time, I can grab a game off the shelf and just play it, so long as I have the system hooked up to play it. And I'm in a unique position where I have the means and the resources to do this. This isn't something that everybody, should do, can do, or even wants to do. Of course, as long as I have the room to store them, that's the other part of it too. It's a significant money investment to do this stuff. It's also a significant space investment to do stuff, especially when I think of, at some point I can't expand anymore. At some point I got to tell myself, like, this has to stop because I literally have no room left. I mean, in these cases, at the very least, I could look at these games on my shelf and kind of believe to myself, like, hey, these games will always work as long as I take care of it, take care of the hardware that I have. And even if I do want to seek out and, purchase it, I can find it. So, like, if there is a game, like a game from the Master System, a game from the Sega Genesis, a game from Xbox 360, whatever, I can go out and find it in its physical form. I don't have to check to see if the store is open, or if I want the ability to purchase said digital game. If I go to, say, if I want to fire up my Wii U and I want to buy some Wii U game that was online only, no, I can't. You can't do this with digital games. Like I said, I mean, we're poised to lose hundreds of digital-only games on the PS3 to this closure that they talked about. And already we've lost hundreds of Wii and Wii U games when their respective stores closed down. 3DS maybe a little bit less, but still a significant amount. I mean, this was because, like I said, they were digital only. and not future proofed. Future proofed is really kind of like the key that I'm trying to lock in here because, like I said earlier, if publishers, developers, and even hardware manufacturers could kind of say, hey, this game that we release on the PS5, we can rest assured that it will be available to download on the PS6 and then the PS7 and so on and so forth. I mean, if they can come out and say that, then maybe my tune will change. And, for what I was talking about with the PS3, the Wii, the Wii U, there's no other options that they've made to keep these games available. I mean, or at least no other option that was looked into. I don't know if they even looked into it. With the physical media form, players have the options to go play them no matter what. And, Steam is a little bit different because the PC is literally one ecosystem. You're getting upgrades to the hardware, but the whole ecosystem, the whole storefront and the marketplace hasn't changed. This is why a lot of people, from what I'm understanding, are kind of coming around to, well, PC gaming maybe is where I stay from now on. And arguably, and maybe even objectively placed, PC gaming is probably the best place to play because you have so many options. And Steam, the marketplace itself, has been open for well over 20 years. And that's not even the only marketplace that's out there right now. You can buy 20-year-old games without having to worry that at some point this game is going to go away. I don't know. So, like I said, I'm in the minority here. I really understand that of appreciation of old games, and the minority group is always sometimes the loudest when it comes to this, and the outrage is out there. It's all over my YouTube feed. It's all over my social media feeds. Many people my age, though, fall out of video games at some point in their lives and really don't look back. There's a lot of people my age that I talk to that said, "Oh, I used to play games when I was younger." And then just, as they get older and they start families, or maybe they just, find other interests, they're not into it anymore. Others don't care enough about old games and only care about what's new that's coming out. They are the overwhelming majority of the customer base. So I honestly, why should any of the big publishers care about 20-year-old games? Preservation? Pfft. Like I say preservation all the time, but please, who cares? You can't make money off a 20-year-old game. No one's going to buy it. Not enough people are going to buy it to make it even worth like having it available to sell, and having it available to buy. Customer choice and power. Yeah, right. Their obligations are to provide a service. And if you don't agree with their terms and services and licensing agreements, then you can go pound sand somewhere else. And someone else will. And, they won't be bothered by it. It's the way of the world, because we may see ourselves as enthusiasts, the small minority of us, but they see us as customers. They see us as consumers. I know I don't need to say that out loud. It's pretty obvious, but damn it, I just don't want to hear in 30 years how pissed off people are that they can't download Grand Theft Auto 6 because Sony shut down the storefront to that platform. At the very least, if you want to go play the old Grand Theft Auto games, you can go buy the Grand Theft Auto games. You can buy the physical game discs to play the Grand Theft Auto games. At some point, you are not going to be able to play Grand Theft Auto 6, especially if you're growing up and you develop fond memories of Grand Theft Auto 6. And 30 years up the road, you're going to find out how I want to play Grand Theft Auto 6 again, and you can't. I don't want to hear you bitching about it. I just don't. And, I kind of liken this to, this encourages piracy and emulation. It really does. And I almost don't even have an argument against it anymore. We know it's extremely rampant now to the point where it's not even whispered in dark corners anymore. It's more openly discussed because there are thousands upon thousands of games that cannot be purchased legally anymore, much less purchasing the platforms that they're on. And the market for them can be brutal with the way these resellers are with their damn prices. So the better alternative is to, you guessed it, pirate and download the games. And man, it's not hard at all to do that. Quick Google search, and you're on your way to downloading the entire PlayStation 2 catalog in minutes. And to be frank, what's stopping me? I mean, I'm not stopping you. I sure as hell don't blame you for wanting to do that. There's really no other better way out there. I mean, especially if you want to, preserve without breaking your bank and needing to take a second mortgage out on your home. And I liken this to physical media as a whole, because physical entertainment media, you got books, you got music, you got movies, and that's primarily where we get our entertainment. And we've seen the shift from, this to digital formats. I mean, admittedly, I have a Kindle, so I read the majority of my books on my Kindle. I still buy books, but not as often. Music, I've, primarily been listening to Spotify and YouTube music for the last quite few, like long time, for at least 10 years at this point. And, you know, so granted, that's where most of my focus has gone. Same with movies and TV shows. I mean, streaming services are out there, and you don't buy physical movies anymore. However, the other caveat with this is that you can still go out to purchase said things. I still buy physical books if I want to. I do. I buy physical books. I still, I mean, over the last year, I've gotten into collecting vinyls and records. I find my favorite bands and I want to support those bands by buying their physical media. Movies too. I don't watch movies that often. Not enough for me to be like, I want to collect the Blu-rays or the 4K Blu-rays or whatever. But those options are still there. You can still go buy physical discs, physical media of movies and TV shows and stuff like that. You still can do that. It's just, like I said, it's a little bit harder for you to find, but you can go on Amazon, you can go, to Walmart, Target, Best Buy, whatever. Maybe not Best Buy. I don't think they do that anymore. I don't know. But you can still find the movies physically. At some point, we're not going to have that with video games. Video games are kind of like the outlier here, where they're just not going to be, there's no other option. The only other option is to download digitally. And, that's the difference here. And a lot of people can come out and say, well, no one buys physical movies anymore. No one buys physical discs anymore. Everyone does streaming. It's like, yeah, but there's still the option. There's still the option. And I really feel we still need the option, the physical media option. So, I mean, that's the state of things, really. I mean, there's the group of us that care about these games, in their physical form, and it's a small minority of us, and there's the vast majority that don't. And the companies are listening to that vast majority, and they're telling them they don't care about physical either. What they also don't care about in that same sentiment is games preservation, consumer power in reselling, or even having the ability to loan the game out to friends, extend the shelf life for games to be able to play for longer stretches of time, and even purchasing protections. I mean, that last one should hit the hardest, because at some point those big purchases you made will go away completely in an all digital world. I mean, it's run by publishers who could pull the plug at any moment. And I don't need to remind you that we've seen this, time and time again in recent memory. And, there's even that initiative of Stop Killing Games movement that's happening in Europe that's, gaining some steam, but it's definitely got its roadblocks, but it's not going to end perfectly the way we want it to. But God, I feel like that movement is a whole other conversation to have, whole other video game collector's diary episode. But I mean, after all this, regardless, I mean, I hate to say it, but after all this, I'm not going to take a stance and say I won't support the next generation when it goes all digital. I mean, I'm really not that way. I play a lot of games on my PC, and of course, those are digital. I remember at the time when, you could buy PC game discs at the store. And at one point, when Steam came out and everyone's internet, and I say everyone's internets became basically more powerful, faster. Downloading games was just much easier. PCs could be cheaper because now you don't have to include disc trays in them. So when that happened, that was a tough pill to swallow too. But I want to say the backlash wasn't necessarily the loudest. That's probably because we didn't have Twitter at the time, and we didn't have Instagram and YouTube, the way it was. So I mean, that's kind of really it. But it's happened to the PC market space, and we don't complain about that right now. I mean, it's just is what it is. I mean, if anything, like I said, digital games are a great way, to buy games, and they're a great way for even small developers to reach their audiences without the need to work with disc or cart manufacturers to distribute their games. I mean, they could just upload it to a storefront, call it a day. But even though it's easy to do, it's really not easy to find success. There's a Jason Schreier episode video that I watched recently where he talked about how hard it is to be an indie developer, especially a brand new indie developer. Finding publishers, finding funds, finding people to work for you trying to tell them like, hey, we can't pay you as much right now because we're on a limited budget, but maybe promises later down the road, whatever. I mean, I kind of liken it to like this 80-20 rule where 80% of the sales go to 20% of the market or 20% of the, sellers, so to speak. I mean, so for every 10 indie games that hit the market, 1 to 2 of them may get some notoriety. And I mean, admittedly, as much as we want to support every indie developer out there, none of us have the time or money to support every indie game out there. And of course, there's genres that are just we're not that interested in. So, I mean, I'll still hang on to what I got. And of course, what I buy in the future. I mean, admittedly, I'm at a point in my collecting career where I don't want to sell anything at this point. I don't think I will ever, all things considering. I mean, it'll bum me out that collecting new will forever change for the worse, which we all knew this would come at some point. But man, despite that, a lot of us just weren't ready for it. I mean, hug your games tight. New memories will be different from here on out, and future generations won't get the experiences we had. I mean, and generally, if you keep up with the latest news, it's all bad in the state of affairs. I mean, you got layoffs, hardware shortages, price increases, shutdowns, ending of physical media, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it makes me more inclined to just fall into more of my retro collection of games when we had this idea, and I say that, a heavy emphasis on that, we had this idea of gaming just being more pure. And this feeling is purely subjective because when these games came out, they were in these mythical and magical times when we were younger and could be more mesmerized by flashing lights and colors on a screen. Nowadays, we really don't get that same whimsy and wonder. So many of us try to recreate those feelings by continuing to play these old games. I mean, I hate saying this out loud, but I do feel this is kind of how it is with me personally. I mean, they can't be recreated and they can never come back. I mean, those were snapshots in time. And while many retro games out there aged like milk, there's still so many that stand up to this day and ones that we can actually show to younger and future generations and have them actually enjoy it, organically. Shoot, even me in my 40s can still gain new experiences from retro games. I mean, check out my episodes on the Master System that I just did recently. I mean, it makes wanting to buy these emulation systems all the more appealing for some because all of your classic collections are in one place. And you don't need to keep buying physical media and store it on a shelf or shove it in a box. And I gotta say, some of those retro emulator consoles and handhelds work real nice. And the software and the emulators are getting better and better by the day. I mean, I don't know where else to go from here. It's interesting watching some of my content creators, some of the content creators that I follow, most notably Happy Console Gamer. He put out a video kind of last minute, unedited video where he was really raw in his feelings and thoughts on this whole thing with Sony and wanting to basically conclude the physical media realm. And it was emotional, and at some points you could think like, man, he's really making a big deal about this. He's really why is he getting so emotional about it? It's just video games. It doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It's just, to many people, it's just junk that's just sitting on a shelf that's not really doing anything. They're just purely display pieces at some point. And it's hard to explain this to people, and it's hard to have other people understand why this is so important for some people. And why this is so meaningful to people like Happy Console Gamer and stuff. not only did he build a living on talking about video games and sharing, things that he picked up, his physical media collection and stuff like that, but he developed fond memories of these games. I mean, a good portion of his videos, he talks about stories about buying this game when he was a kid or buying this game when he was younger, in his 20s, and then even just like memories that he had of buying games with his parents and other family members and friends and stuff like that. I mean, there's so much around this that gets lost in the business room, gets lost in the, you know, in the conference room, so to speak, of, well, let's just sell digital games because that's where all the money is right now. They don't see the human effect of what video games bring to people. It's hard to talk about that unless, people like us sit in the conference room with them and tell them like, this is what you're doing. And granted, it's a small 15% of people, like I said, that care about this physical media stuff, but there's other things at stake that become, you know, there's other things at stake that aren't coming to pass right now and haven't showed themselves, and they will later on when all of a sudden we were like, oh, we had the power to stop this, and now we can't anymore. It's too late at this point. So, um, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll always have my collection. I'll always have the freedom to play them on my own terms. I mean, future collectors will have trouble, but man, them's the breaks. Them's the breaks. Stay gaming. That's all I can do.